Welcome to Alive and Cooking. On today's menu there's French onion soup, Gruyere potatoes and praline ice cream. Between courses I'll be talking to our resident GP, Dr. Stephen Emile, in our food clinic about osteoporosis. The food files are on bread and butter. But first, let's start with the French onion soup. So for French onion soup you need some onions. Now I've already peeled these onions and I'm going to slice them just in thick chunks. And I'm going to fry them in a little bit of virgin olive oil. Because I'm using a non-stick pan, I don't need to use a lot of oil, which is advantageous because it just keeps the calorie content of this soup down. Now olive oil is a good form of fat because it produces HDL, which is high-density lipoprotein in our bodies. Now you might think, why do we want that? That helps excrete the bad sort of cholesterol, which is LDL. But you need to remember when you're using any sort of oil that it does have as many calories in as any sort of fat like lard or butter. I'm going to leave those sizzling and caramelizing for about 10 to 15 minutes. It's most important you get a good caramelized onion, or the soup will be very bland. Now I've had some caramelizing away, and you can see that the onion's gone very clear, and it has a lovely aroma of the natural sugars that are around in the onions. They've mixed with the olive oil and they have produced a type of caramel. Now I need to add my stock to this. I've got some fresh vegetable stock. If you can't find fresh stock, you could always use stock cubes. That needs to simmer for about 10 to 15 minutes, along with some herbs and some yeast extract. There's a magical thing about yeast extract because it contains a lot of B vitamins, which are good for the skin, good for the immune system. It's rather like black treacle. It's naturally quite salty, so it's important that you don't add any salt at this point. It's best to wait until the end of the dish and then just check it before you serve it. A lot of recipes say add salt at this stage, but that's an automatic habit. Too much salt in the diet can cause you to develop high blood pressure, so obviously we want to avoid that if we possibly can. I'm going to leave that to simmer so that the stock mixes with the onions and the herbs. Now whilst that's simmering away, I'm going to prepare my crouton, which is very traditional to serve with French onion soup. Now I've toasted some wholemeal bread, which also has some seeds in. Now wholemeal bread is very rich in fibre, which is good for the digestive system, and it also helps prevent diseases like cancer and heart disease. So along with the olive oil, this is a really good anti-heart disease soup. But if you wanted to use white bread, you could, or indeed some herb bread. Now my soup is ready to serve. As you can see, I've only used onions and stock in this soup and some fresh herbs, which I'm going to add at the end. So it's very cheap and easy and a good way of getting B vitamins into your body, much better than taking a supplement. So I'm going to garnish with some croutons, a little bit of fresh herb, and some grated cheese, which is the other traditional ingredient to serve with French onion soup.
Butter contains a lot of fat. Unfortunately, this fat is the saturated animal fat, which can produce cholesterol within the body. So for people with a high cholesterol level, you just need to watch the amount of butter that you use. Many people are relieved to find out that butter is more of a natural product than a lot of the margarines or low-fat spreads on the market. These alternatives can contain a lot of preservatives and additives, which certainly don't make them any healthier than butter. So just use a small amount and your diet can be perfectly well balanced. Many people forget that butter is made from milk, and therefore it also contains a lot of calcium. Calcium is an essential nutrient which produces strong, healthy bones and teeth. So when you're looking at your child's diet, don't be afraid of using butter, as this can provide them with an essential bone-forming mineral that their bodies desperately need.
It's time now for our food clinic with Dr. Stephen Emile, where we talk about everyday health problems. Today we're covering osteoporosis. What is it, Stephen?
Well, it's a pretty serious condition, actually. It's where the bone loses mass, it becomes thinner and more brittle, and as a result, much more likely to fracture, just like that. You can see the bone becomes sort of thinned and honeycombed, and particularly the bones, the neck of the femur, the wrist, the ribs and the vertebrae are all likely to fracture.
And who gets it?
Well, it's something that happens gradually to most people as they get older, but it's particularly common in women after the menopause when they lose the protective effect of estrogen. But other people can get it too. People who are very heavy smokers, who are very underweight. It runs in families to a certain extent. People who are confined to wheelchairs, for example, who don't get any exercise. And, you know, I once had a patient, a 19-year-old anorexic ballet dancer, and she was just hugging her mother goodbye at the railway station, and her mother broke 4 of her ribs.
Gosh, I've seen it in women also, that they want to be so slim. Obviously they're not anorexic, but they take their body fat levels too low, and they lose their periods, which might seem a highly attractive scenario because they can cause problems.
That can be the price they pay.
Yeah, that in later years it can be as early sort of as 35, 40 years old, can't you?
Yeah, well, my 19-year-old.
Now, nutritionally, there's an awful lot we can do to prevent it.
Yes, very much so. I mean, it's really all about laying down good, strong bones early in life. We're talking about childhood up to early adulthood. And of course, that's about diet with your calcium and vitamin D. It's also about exercise, which actually forms stronger bones.
Now, calcium, we know, a lot of people know that it's sort of milk, cheese, yoghurt, but people are worried about the fat content of those foods, so that I see women in particular saying, well, I shouldn't have those foods because they're too high in saturated fats, and therefore they're going to cause me to have a high cholesterol level. But really, you should put that concern on the back of your mind, because if you're having a healthy, balanced diet that contains, you know, some milk, some cheese, and lean meats and pasta and things like that, you shouldn't overconsume. I mean, you don't need to actually eat a lot of calcium to get your requirement.
There's enough in a pint even of skimmed milk,
yes,
is there?
completely.
Yeah.
And there's in fact more calcium in skimmed milk, which people don't realise. So you can have a low-fat intake and not compromise your calcium status.
Right. Aren't there also things which can actually stop you absorbing calcium so
much?
Yes,
that's primarily caffeine. That's the big one that we go on about in health programmes. But it binds calcium within the gut so that the body doesn't absorb the calcium. It also stops the body from... Well, actually, it causes the body to excrete more calcium, so that you're losing out in both respects.
Yeah, and isn't this one of the situations where too much fibre in the wrong place can actually stop the absorption?
That's your wholemeal breads, your vegetables and fruits. So it might confuse people, because they're saying, well, in one breath we're saying they should have plenty of fresh fruits and vegetables, but in the other breath it can inhibit the absorption of calcium.
Right.
But if you have sort of a glass of milk on its own, or some cheese with some bread, you should get enough calcium from it.
Now obviously the issue of HRT is really important here, and many women reaching menopause are concerned about osteoporosis and come for HRT for that reason. I mean, I'm very happy to give it to women who are particularly at risk of it, and those are the groups that we've talked about, you know, the smokers, the ones who are very underweight with a strong family history of osteoporosis. So it can make a very big difference, particularly to those women. But in all women, a good calcium-containing diet, plenty of exercise, keeping their weight under control, they're important too, aren't they?
Yes, they are, definitely.
And same sort of diet we're talking about, and no supplements.
No, With some people, if you're not able to take dairy products because there's lactose intolerance, which is an inability for the body to cope with dairy products, and therefore they can be really useful then. But as a primary source, we should be really urging women in particular to boost their calcium intake, keep active, don't have too much caffeine, and therefore hopefully we can prevent osteoporosis.
Very much so.
Thank you, Stephen. Now in a few minutes I'll be back in the kitchen cooking garlic and herb chicken. It's very good for boosting the immune system, which we can all do with. Join me after the break. Welcome back. Today's main course is garlic and herb chicken with Gruyere potatoes. The first stage of the dish is to make the garlic and herb chicken. I've chosen some skinless chicken breasts, which I'm going to fry in a little bit of virgin olive oil, just to seal the chicken. You can hear them sizzling away. I just want to gently brown and seal the chicken breasts. That'll give them a little bit of flavour. Now, chicken is a good source of protein, which is important when you're trying to build strong, healthy muscles. An interesting fact is that most people overconsume the amount of protein that they have in their diet. You only need 1 gram of protein per kilo of your body weight, which for most people would be 1 chicken breast equivalent a day. Obviously, if the protein is lean, like chicken or lean red meat or some egg, seafood, then that helps keep the fat content of your diet down. And obviously, if you're vegetarian, then you can get your protein from baked beans and pulses and cheese. To these chicken breasts, I'm going to add some fresh herbs. I've got some thyme and some rosemary. If you can't get hold of fresh herbs, you could always use some dried ones. You just put the whole sprigs in, and some garlic. Now, I've called this garlic herb chicken because I'm going to put loads of cloves of garlic in. Now, garlic is very good at helping to keep our blood vessels clear. So it's good at preventing heart disease. And to that, I'm going to add some wine before I put it into the oven. I'm just going to cover the chicken breasts completely with the wine. Now, you might think this can't be healthy if I'm adding all of this alcohol, but whilst the chicken is cooking, the alcohol will evaporate off, so we're just left with the beautiful flavours of the wine. Now, I'm just going to add a few fresh herbs that have been chopped as well, and I'm going to pop it into an oven to simmer away and cook the chicken thoroughly. My oven's set at about 190 degrees, and I need to cook that for a good half an hour. But I've had one simmering away in the oven, just to save some time. And as you'll see, the chicken breasts have cooked thoroughly in the wine, and the wine has reduced right down. So I need to prepare my Gruyere potatoes, which are an excellent way of getting calcium into your diet. And since we've just been talking about osteoporosis, this is a good dish to help prevent it, as well as eat when you have it. Now, the calcium comes from some cheese, some yogurt, and I'm going to mix it with some fresh herbs and some mustard and a little paprika. Now, I've parboiled my potatoes, which means that I've slightly cooked them, and I've arranged them neatly in a dish, bottoms up. You could slice old potatoes, but I think it's lovely to use little baby potatoes. So you just literally mix all the ingredients in. I've got some parsley and some chives, and a little paprika, and some mustard to enhance the cheesy flavour. and a little bit of black pepper and salt, just to bring the flavours out. So you just quickly blend them together. And then you pour the sauce over the potatoes. So this really gives your body lots of calcium. It's good for children as well, as they need to develop strong teeth and bones, which you grow your bones, which sounds strange, but you have to remember they are alive up until about the age of 21. And then from the age of 21, you start to lose some bone. Now, I'm going to put my potatoes into the oven. They take quite a long time to cook. They take about an hour to an hour and a quarter. Now, if you are vegetarian and you don't want to serve the chicken with your potatoes, you could serve another source of protein, which you can get from your baked beans. But the most important thing when you're eating baked bean protein is that you put some cereal there, which comes from whole grain bread or indeed white bread. So you might want to serve just a slice of white bread with the potato as well. So after about an hour and a quarter, my potatoes are golden brown on top, and they smell magnificent. And they go perfectly with my chicken, which adds my protein. And of course, baked beans if you don't want to eat the chicken. So there you have an incredibly tasty course, which helps prevent not only heart disease, but also osteoporosis. Garlic and herb chicken with Gruyere potatoes.
Bread is incredibly rich in carbohydrate. Carbohydrate is needed to produce energy within the body. You will notice that there are so many different types of bread on the market: wholemeal, granary, white. You need to really look and find a bread that is good for your time of life. White bread, for instance, contains calcium, therefore it's very good for children when they're laying down strong bones and teeth. But as we grow older, our body generally needs more fibre to help our digestive system stay healthy. So we need to look at the wholemeal and the whole grain breads, as their fibre content is a lot higher. Some people have a problem with wheat and gluten, and they primarily need to avoid the normal wheat breads. But there are other gluten-free breads on the market, or you could even make your own with potato flour or rice flour. For those of you that need a particular energy boost, you could look to the continental breads like ciabatta, as they contain not only carbohydrate, but the rich olive oils to help your body get the boost it needs.
And now for the dessert, we're going to make a delicious praline ice cream. Now the base of praline is almond, and I've got some blanched almonds here that I'm going to make into a praline, which basically is a caramel. So I've mixed these nuts with some sugar in a saucepan, and I've brought them up to the boiling point, to the caramelization point, and then I've put it on some greaseproof paper on a baking sheet, and I've let it set. And then once you've let it set, it looks like this, and it's toffee with some nuts inside. You need to then break it into small pieces because we're going to put it in with the cream mixture, and you don't want large chunks of nuts. At the base of an ice cream is a custard, which I've pre-made using a whole vanilla pod. I've infused the vanilla pod in some milk and some cream, some double cream, and once that has come up to the boiling point, I've let it slightly cool and I've added my eggs and I've made a thick vanilla custard. Now, if you don't want to make or risk making your own custard, you could buy a ready-made custard. You can buy them in tubs from supermarkets, so that would be a good way to save some time. Now, the other ingredient within an ice cream is, of course, the cream. Now, the advantage of using this recipe as opposed to a lot of other ice cream recipes, is that you don't need an ice cream maker because there's no water in this recipe, so therefore no ice crystals will develop. So you can make it and just put it in the freezer, and then you can leave it. I'm going to whip my cream up, the double cream. Now, cream and indeed custard are very rich in calcium, which, as we spoke about earlier, is an important ingredient when you're trying to prevent or treat osteoporosis. I've just whipped it to the point that it's still quite slack. And I'm going to stir it in to my custard. This is a real treat food. Add my praline that's been crumbled and a little bit of brandy. A hotly debated subject is the aphrodisiac. Some people don't believe in them, and indeed there is no research to show that there's actually anything scientific behind the aphrodisiac. It's more the sensual aspect of eating, and I think there's nothing more sexy than eating some praline ice cream, which I'll show you later. Now this needs to go into a little ice cream tub to put into the freezer. It normally takes a good 10 to 12 hours to freeze, so you can do it overnight. You need to take it out of the freezer and leave it for a few minutes before you serve. So the last thing you want is really tough, hard ice cream. As you can see, this is just at the perfect eating stage because it's lovely and creamy. And you just want to decorate with some praline, which I reserved from before. And you can eat it to your heart's content. A lovely nutty treat, rich in protein and incredibly sexy praline ice cream. That's all we have time for, but do join me again for more nutritious nibbles on the next Alive and Cooking. I'll see you then.